All right, welcome to the second principle for getting prompted. This is another foundational principle. The previous one was about ChatGPT, and this one's about AI models. Principle three is when we're going to actually dive into the techniques and best practices for prompting and getting the AI to obey us. But a lot of that is dependent on the AI model we choose. So I want to lay this foundation right now, talk about AI models for a moment. So the AI, or when we talk about AI, it has these things called models. And you've probably heard of GPT-4 and GPT 3.5. In ChatGPT, you can select GPT-4 if you have the paid $20 a month account, and you can by default select GPT 3.5. Both of these are text models, okay? But if you ask GPT-4 to generate an image, it will use, see this thing right here that says DALL-E, DAL, and then a dash E, all right? That's an image model. We can see the other models that OpenAI has. There's this document page here. So there's different GPT-4 turbo models and GPT-4 models. There's different GPT 3.5 turbo models, and there's a DALL-E model. So we scroll down, there's like a turbo, and there's an updated turbo, and there's a turbo preview, all kinds of different models here. They each kind of do the same thing, but they've been updated at different times. Like this is current to 2024 of April. This is current to November the 6th of 2023. And then there's GPT-4 models. There's a couple different ones there. And then there's a couple GPT 3.5 models. And then there's only one DALL-E 3 model right here. So a lot of different models. So that might beg the question, then what is ChatGPT? Is ChatGPT a model? It's not. ChatGPT is just an interface to these models. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. ChatGPT is not an AI. ChatGPT is simply an interface to talk with these particular models. Now, all of these models and the interface of ChatGPT were created by a company called OpenAI. Okay, OpenAI is the company. We can go to Google and just type in OpenAI. Actually, not Sora. And this is the company that kind of jump-started the whole AI revolution. So they created all these different models, and it sounds like a pretty cool place to work. And they also have a video model coming out soon called Sora. You should definitely Google this and check it out if you've never heard of it before. But it's openai.com/Sora. And check this out. This is insane. So this is down here. Here's the prompt. A stylish woman walks down a Tokyo street filled with warm glowing neon and animated city signage. So this is all generated with AI. If you watch the background, you can spot a couple glitches here or there, but this is all AI. And if we fast forward, look at that. That's that's not a real person. There's no real person out there that this is basing this on. This is literally just based from this prompt right here. Here's another example. The prompt is the camera follows behind a white vintage SUV with a black roof rack as it speeds up a steep dirt road surrounded by pine trees on a steep mountain slope. Dust kicks up from its tires, and there's more stuff in here for the prompt also. Absolutely amazing. Some of you might have seen this, some of you might not have, but this is going to be a game changer in terms of just reality itself. So that's called Sora. Now, all of those were created by OpenAI. But OpenAI is not the only people that have created models. So this is a model called Gemini, and it's by Google. This is Gemini. You got to pay monthly for this one, for the advanced one. But I think this is like version like 1.5 or something like that. And so I actually had ChatGPT write a short essay about the Civil War using ChatGPT 4. Here's the essay right here. And then I asked Gemini to do that. And so here's the essay right here. And there's another company called Anthropic, and they made it something called Claude. And depending on your subscription to Claude, they have a free version, but they also have a paid version. They all have these paid versions, $20 a month. So here is the short essay on the Civil War by Claude. Which one's better? It's hard to say. A lot of people do prefer the paid version of Claude more than ChatGPT. It's very ever so slight though. But OpenAI is working on GPT-5, which is going to be even better than Claude. It's like a big race right now. The long and short of it is, I don't think any of them are necessarily better than the others. They're all fighting against each other to develop the best AI. And at the end of the day, we the consumers, are the ultimate winners in this whole race. Now, all of those are closed source models. So GPT-4, GPT 3.5, even though the company's called OpenAI, their AI models are not really open. They're not open source so that we can view the code. Neither is Gemini, neither is Claude. However, there are some open source models where they're completely free. You can download them, run them on your computer, but they're not as powerful as some of these other models. As an example, Amazon is training their own model right now. I think it's going to be one of the largest models whenever they get it done, although these other companies might catch up. And it's said to cost Amazon $1 billion to just train the model. But there's also X or Twitter has a model called Grok, although I think it's like a humorous kind of thing. So there's a lot of sarcasm and whatnot in it. I don't really know what kind of value it provides to the end user, but there it is. It's important to think of these models as like a human brain that has to a certain spot, and then the development stopped and that person was like frozen in time. So I don't know how old you are, but think of your brain right now. Imagine if someone were to freeze your learning. So you could never learn any more stuff, but you could perfectly recall and synthesize information you already learned. That's what a model is. AI models don't learn anymore. They have to be retrained from scratch. They can't learn new things. That's why when you go to ChatGPT and we say, my name is Bob Hope. Hello, Bob Hope. And I open up a new chat and I say, what is my name? The AI has absolutely no idea because, again, it hasn't learned my name. All that it knows, where'd it go? Right here. If I ask it again, what is my name? It knows my name is Bob Hope because remember we covered this before. All of this conversation, its response, my question, its response, my statement, all of this is being fed back in to simulate persistent knowledge. But the AI has no continuous learning after it was already trained. If we look at the models that OpenAI have, they'll all have like training data up to 2023. So, like this GPT-4 Turbo model, for instance, this has been trained with data up to this point in time. Now, the training data, right? Some of these models have a wider range of training data than other models, like the GPT 3.5 Turbo model. All right, the size of the brain, for example, is smaller than the size of the brain for Claude Opus or the size of the brain for GPT-4, for instance. Not only can these AI models not learn new things, each of these models have their own level of intelligence, their own like different size of brain. Taking the human analogy, you could say, okay, some of these models are like developed teenagers. That's how much they know. Other models are like rocket scientists or Albert Einstein or something like that. So when we use ChatGPT, for instance, if you pay the $20 a month, you might be wondering, why can I only use ChatGPT 4 so many times, but I can almost use GPT 3.5 an unlimited amount of times? The reason is the brain for GPT-4 is bigger and therefore consumes more energy. The bigger the brain, the more energy it uses to respond to your requests. Whereas the smaller brains, like 3.5, they're very inexpensive to run from a computational standpoint. And so that's why you can use GPT 3.5 almost as much as you want. So we've talked about how there's different models, how there's some that are not open to the public, how there are models that are open to the public. We've talked about how each model can't learn anymore beyond its training data. Once it finished training, it's not going to learn anymore. It can synthesize data and respond to stuff and chat with you, but it's going to have no memory the next day of what you talked about unless you feed that data back into it. Then we talked about how each model has its own basically brain size, all right, brain capability. And we talked about how it's not going to remember your conversation. So it's almost like a single use notebook. It can write stuff down in the notebook and then write its answer in the notebook. But then when it's done, it crumples that piece of paper up and gets a blank page and starts again, starts with that fresh chat. And then finally, we mentioned how there's a limited number of chats that you can make with GPT-4 just because it's more expensive to run because the brain is bigger. So what's cool about ChatGPT is you pay a flat fee, but if you actually access the API, which is, and this gets a little bit into the weeds, but there's a way to connect to the OpenAI models not through the ChatGPT interface, and you could do it through code. But in our next lesson, we're actually going to connect to these models, to any of these models, using something called the playground. I hope this lesson kind of laid a good foundation for what the AI models are, how they work, and the limits of them. And we'll dive right into the next lesson. Hope to see you there.